The rain-slicked streets of Seattle's Queen Anne neighborhood gleamed under the dim glow of streetlights as Maria Alvarez hurried through the evening chill, her thin jacket barely shielding her from the drizzle. Her sneakers, worn from years of treading the polished floors of Daniel Harper's sprawling mansion, squeaked against the wet pavement. In her hand, she clutched a small grocery bag with ingredients for dinner. Nothing fancy, just enough to keep her and her 8-year-old daughter Sophia fed after a long day. Maria's shift at the Harper residence had ended an hour ago, but she'd stayed late to scrub a stubborn stain from the marble countertops, a task demanded by Vanessa Caldwell, Daniel's fiancée, who seemed to delight in finding flaws in Maria's work. The memory of Vanessa's sharp voice still echoed in her ears. "This kitchen looks like a pigsty, Maria." "Do it again." Maria's jaw tightened as she pushed open the gate to the small apartment complex where she and Sophia lived, a world away from the opulent hilltop homes she cleaned. She couldn't afford to lose this job, not when Sophia's school fees and their cramped but stable life depended on it. Every night, after Sophia went to bed, Maria would pull out her laptop, its screen cracked but functional, and study for her online business administration degree fueled by black coffee and the dream of opening a bakery inspired by her abuela's recipes. The scent of cinnamon and roasted chiles from her childhood in Jalisco lingered in her mind, a reminder of a life she hoped to reclaim. Inside their one-bedroom apartment, Sophia sat cross-legged on the threadbare couch, sketching in a notebook. Her dark curls bounced as she looked up, her eyes bright despite the late hour. "Mama, I drew a tres leches cake for your bakery," she announced, holding up a colorful sketch of a cake adorned with strawberries and swirls of cream. Maria's heart softened, but her smile was strained. "It's beautiful, mi amor," she said, brushing a hand over Sophia's hair. "But you should be in bed. School tomorrow." Sophia pouted, clutching her pencil. "I wanted to wait for you." Did Miss Vanessa yell again? The question stung, and Maria knelt beside her daughter, forcing a calm she didn't feel. "She's just particular. Now, let's get you tucked in." As she helped Sophia into her pajamas, Maria's mind drifted to the day's humiliations. Vanessa had hovered over her while she polished silverware, her manicured nails tapping impatiently. "You missed a spot," she'd snapped, pointing to an imaginary smudge. Later, when Maria had dared to set out a plate of homemade alfajores cookies she'd made to test her abuela's recipe, Vanessa had wrinkled her nose. "Who told you to waste time baking? This isn't your kitchen." The words had cut deeper than they should have, but Maria had swallowed her pride, as always, for Sophia's sake. The next morning, Maria arrived at the Harper mansion at dawn, her breath visible in the crisp Seattle air. The house, a modern marvel of glass and steel perched on a hill with a view of Puget Sound, felt more like a museum than a home. Daniel Harper, a 35-year-old tech mogul who'd built a fortune on cybersecurity software, was rarely there, his days consumed by meetings in downtown high-rises or trips to Silicon Valley. Maria admired his quiet intelligence from afar, the way he'd nod politely when she served him coffee, his blue eyes distracted but kind. But Vanessa was another story. As Maria began her tasks, dusting the mahogany bookshelves in Daniel's study, she heard the click of heels on the hardwood floor. Vanessa swept in her blonde hair, cascading over a tailored coat, her lips pursed in disapproval. "Maria, why is there a child's drawing on the fridge?" she demanded, pointing to a crayon sketch Sophia had made for Daniel, a stick-figure family under a rainbow. Maria froze her duster, hovering mid-air. "Sophia made it for Mr. Harper. He said she could put it up." Vanessa's laugh was sharp, like glass breaking. "A maid's kid decorating his house. Honestly, Maria, know your place." Maria's cheeks burned, but she bit her tongue, focusing on the wood grain beneath her fingers. The day wore on with relentless demands. Vanessa insisted Maria rewash a load of linens because they smelled cheap, though Maria had used the exact detergent specified. By noon, Maria was scrubbing the guest bathroom tiles when Sophia arrived from school, her backpack slung over one shoulder. Daniel had allowed Sophia to come to the mansion after classes, a rare kindness that eased Maria's burden as a single mother. Sophia settled in the kitchen, quietly coloring, while Maria prepared a snack. But Vanessa's voice soon shattered the peace. "Maria, why is there juice on my blouse?" She stormed in, holding a silk top with a faint orange stain. Maria's heart sank. "I'm so sorry, Miss Caldwell. I'll clean it right away." Vanessa's eyes narrowed, glinting with malice. "Your brat spilled it, didn't she?" Sophia's head snapped up, her small hands trembling. "I didn't. Mama!" "I swear." Maria stepped between them, her voice steady despite her racing pulse. "It was an accident, Miss Caldwell. I'll take care of it." Vanessa scoffed, tossing the blouse at Maria. "You're useless, both of you." That evening, Maria stayed late again, baking in the mansion's pristine kitchen, while Sophia slept on a couch in the staff room. She was testing a recipe for conchas, the sweet Mexican bread her abuela used to make their golden tops dusted with sugar. The oven's warmth filled the room, a fleeting comfort against the cold weight of her reality. She wanted to perfect these recipes not just for herself, but for Sophia, to show her that dreams could rise like dough if you worked hard enough. As she pulled the tray from the oven, the door swung open. Vanessa stood there, her arms crossed, her emerald eyes icy. "What's this mess?" she snapped, gesturing to the flour-dusted counter. "I'd told you, no baking." Before Maria could respond, Vanessa grabbed a concha and tossed it into the trash. "This is garbage, Maria. You're not a chef. You're a maid." Sophia, awakened by the noise, ran in and gasped, tears welling as she saw her mother's work discarded. "Mama worked hard on that," she cried. Vanessa whirled on her. "Don't talk back, you little—" She raised her hand, and Maria's body moved on instinct, stepping in front of Sophia. "Please, Miss Caldwell." "Don't," Maria said, her voice shaking but firm. Vanessa froze her hand, still raised, a cruel smile curling her lips. "You're pathetic," she hissed, lowering her arm. "Clean this up. Now!" Maria's hands trembled as she swept the flour into a dustpan, Sophia clinging to her side, sobbing quietly. The weight of Vanessa's cruelty pressed harder each day, but Maria couldn't quit. Not when Sophia's school, her future, depended on this job. As she tucked Sophia back into the couch, she whispered, "We're okay, mi amor. We're stronger than this." But doubt gnawed at her. How long could she endure? She returned to the kitchen, her eyes catching on the fridge where Sophia's drawing still hung untouched. Daniel had seen it last week and smiled, saying, "She's got talent." It was a small gesture, but it had warmed Maria's heart, a rare moment of kindness in a house ruled by Vanessa's venom. The next day, Daniel returned from a trip to San Francisco, his suitcase thudding against the foyer floor. Maria was polishing the grand staircase when he walked in, his tie loosened, his dark hair slightly mussed. "Maria, everything okay?" he asked, his voice softer than usual. She nodded, avoiding his gaze, afraid he'd see the exhaustion in her eyes. "Yes, Mr. Harper." He hesitated, as if sensing something amiss, but his phone buzzed, pulling him away. Maria watched him disappear into his study, her chest tight. She wanted to tell him about Vanessa, about the insults, the threats, but fear held her back. What if he didn't believe her? What if he chose Vanessa, his glamorous fiancée, over a maid? That afternoon, Maria baked again, this time a small batch of churros, their cinnamon sugar scent filling the kitchen. Sophia, doing homework nearby, clapped when Maria handed her one. "It's just like abuela's," she said, her smile brighter than the Seattle sun that rarely showed. Maria's heart lifted, but the moment shattered when Vanessa stormed in her heels, clicking like a metronome. Again, with this nonsense, she sneered, snatching a churro from the plate and breaking it in half. "You think you're some kind of baker? This is a joke." She threw the pieces into the sink and Sophia's face crumpled. Maria's hands clenched her nails, digging into her palms. "Miss Caldwell, I made those for Sophia," she said, her voice low but steady. Vanessa laughed, stepping closer, her perfume overwhelming. "You don't get to make things here, Maria. You clean. That's it." Sophia's small voice piped up, trembling. "Mama's baking is better than anything you do." Vanessa's head snapped toward the girl, her eyes narrowing. "What did you say?" She took a step toward Sophia, and Maria's heart stopped. She grabbed Sophia's hand, pulling her behind her. "Please, leave her alone," Maria said, her voice barely above a whisper. Vanessa's hand twitched, as if itching to strike. But the sound of the front door opening stopped her. Daniel appeared, his briefcase in hand, his face darkening as he took in the scene, Maria shielding Sophia, Vanessa looming over them, the broken churros in the sink. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice sharp. Vanessa's demeanor shifted instantly, her face softening into a mask of innocence. "Oh, Daniel, thank goodness you're here. Maria's been wasting time baking, and her daughter was rude to me." Maria's throat tightened, but she met Daniel's gaze, her eyes pleading for him to see the truth. Sophia clung to her mother's leg, silent but trembling. Daniel's jaw tightened, his eyes flicking to the sink, then back to Vanessa. "Maria, take Sophia to the staff room," he said quietly. Maria nodded, guiding her daughter away, her heart pounding. As she closed the door behind them, she heard Daniel's voice, low and tense. "Vanessa, we need to talk." Maria sat with Sophia, stroking her hair, trying to calm her own racing thoughts. Had Daniel seen the truth? Or would Vanessa's charm win him over as it always did? She glanced at her phone, where she'd saved photos of the bruises Vanessa had left on her arm from a clumsy shove last week. She hadn't shown anyone, not yet, but they were her insurance, her proof, if it ever came to that. Sophia looked up, her eyes wide. "Mama, is Mr. Harper mad at us?" Maria forced a smile. "No, mi amor. He's figuring things out." But as she hugged her daughter, Maria couldn't shake the fear that this was only the beginning, that Vanessa's cruelty would escalate, and that her dreams of a bakery, of a better life for Sophia, might crumble under the weight of a woman who saw her as less than human. Yet deep inside a spark of defiance flickered. Maria Alvarez was no stranger to hardship. She'd survived worse than Vanessa Caldwell, and she'd fight for her daughter's future no matter the cost. The Seattle rain had turned into a steady downpour, drumming against the tall windows of Daniel Harper's Queen Anne mansion as Maria Alvarez scrubbed the hardwood floors in the dining room. Her knees ached from hours of work, but her mind was elsewhere, replaying the confrontation from the previous day. Daniel's voice, sharp and questioning, had cut through the tension when he caught Vanessa looming over Sophia, broken churros scattered in the sink. Maria had spent the night tossing in her small apartment, wondering if Daniel had believed Vanessa's honeyed lies, or if he'd seen the truth in Sophia's tear-streaked face. She glanced at the clock, 3:00 p.m. Sophia would arrive soon from school, her backpack bouncing as she'd run into the kitchen to share stories of her day. Maria clung to those moments, small anchors in a sea of uncertainty. Her job at the Harper mansion was her lifeline, paying for Sophia's private school and her own late-night studies for an online business administration degree. But Vanessa's cruelty was a storm cloud over it all, threatening to wash away everything Maria had built. As she polished the dining table, the front door slammed and Vanessa's voice sliced through the quiet. "Maria, where are you?" Maria's stomach knotted, but she rose, wiping her hands on her apron. Vanessa stood in the foyer, her designer coat dripping onto the marble floor, her eyes glinting with something darker than usual. "The guest room linens are wrinkled," she said, tossing a pile of perfectly pressed sheets at Maria's feet. "Do them again, and don't let that kid of yours near my things." Maria knotted her jaw tight and gathered the linens. She'd learned to swallow Vanessa's barbs, but each one stung deeper, especially when they targeted Sophia. As she headed to the laundry room, she passed Daniel's study where he sat hunched over his laptop, his brow furrowed. Their eyes met briefly, and Maria saw a flicker of concern before he looked away, his phone buzzing with another call. She wanted to believe he'd protect her and Sophia, but doubt gnawed at her. He was a millionaire, engaged to a woman from his world. Why would he side with a maid? Sophia arrived an hour later, her raincoat soaked as she slipped into the kitchen. "Mama, I got an A on my math test," she said, waving a paper with a red star. Maria hugged her, the warmth of her daughter's pride easing the day's weight. "That's my girl," she said, kissing Sophia's forehead. She set out a plate of tamales she'd made the night before, another test of her abuela's recipes for the bakery she dreamed of opening. As Sophia ate, Maria pulled out her laptop, stealing a moment to review her notes on supply chain management. She was halfway through a chapter when Vanessa's heels clicked into the kitchen. "What's this?" Vanessa snapped, eyeing the laptop. "You're supposed to be working, not playing student." Maria closed the laptop, her voice steady. "I'm on my break, Miss Caldwell." Vanessa's lips curled into a sneer. "Break? You don't get breaks to pretend you're something you're not." She leaned closer, her voice low. "You're here to clean Maria. Nothing more." Maria's hands trembled, but she held Vanessa's gaze. "I'm doing my job, Miss Caldwell." Vanessa laughed, a cold, cutting sound. "Your job, you're barely competent. And keep that kid out of my sight." Sophia shrank in her chair, her tamale untouched. Maria's heart pounded, but before she could respond, Daniel's voice came from the doorway. "Vanessa, enough." He stood there, his suit jacket off, his expression unreadable. Vanessa spun around, her demeanor shifting to saccharine sweetness. "Daniel, darling, I was just ensuring the house is up to standard." Daniel's eyes flicked to Maria, then to Sophia, who clutched her mother's hand. "Maria's doing fine," he said, his tone clipped. "Let's talk in my study." As Vanessa followed him, she shot Maria a venomous look, a promise of worse to come. In the staff room, Maria sat with Sophia, trying to calm her daughter's fears. "Why does she hate us?" Mama Sophia whispered, her eyes wide. Maria smoothed her curls, forcing a smile. "She doesn't understand us, mi amor. But we're stronger than her words." Inside, though, Maria's resolve wavered. She'd been documenting Vanessa's abuse photos of bruises from accidental shoves, saved texts of veiled threats, knowing she might need them if Vanessa pushed too far. But using them meant risking her job, her stability. She couldn't afford to lose this, not when Sophia's school and her own education hung in the balance. That night, as Sophia slept, Maria baked again, shaping pan dulce with practiced hands. The act was defiance, a quiet rebellion against Vanessa's attempts to crush her spirit. She imagined her bakery, Sabores de Abuela, a cozy spot in Pike Place Market, where families would gather, drawn by the warmth of her heritage. The next morning, Daniel found Maria in the kitchen, icing a batch of conchas. "Those smell incredible," he said, startling her. She flushed, expecting a reprimand, but he smiled, picking up a concha. "May I?" She nodded, and he took a bite, his eyes widening. This is amazing, Maria. Where'd you learn to bake like this?" Her voice softened. "My abuela. She had a small fonda in Jalisco. I'm trying to keep her recipes alive." Daniel leaned against the counter, his usual hurry replaced by curiosity. "You're full of surprises. What else don't I know about you?" Maria hesitated, then admitted, "I'm studying business administration. Online. I want to open a bakery someday." Daniel's brow raised, impressed. "That's ambitious. Ever need a taste tester? I'm your guy." His easy grin disarmed her, but Vanessa's voice interrupted, sharp and accusing. "Daniel, why are you wasting time with her?" She stood in the doorway, her arms crossed, her eyes darting between them. The tension escalated over the next week. Vanessa's demands grew harsher, repolishing silverware, rewashing windows, all while sneering at Maria's every move. One afternoon, as Maria cleaned the library, she overheard Daniel discussing a supply chain issue with his CFO over a video call. "We're losing efficiency in our Asian distribution," Daniel said, frustration evident. Maria paused her rag still as an idea sparked. She'd read about lean supply chains in her studies, and Daniel's problem sounded familiar. Later, when he passed through the library, she gathered her courage. "Mr. Harper, about your supply chain issue, have you considered regional hubs instead of centralized distribution? It could cut costs." Daniel stopped, surprised. "You heard that?" She nodded, bracing for dismissal, but he tilted his head. "Tell me more." Hesitantly, she outlined a strategy from her textbook, adapting it to his company. Daniel listened, nodding slowly. "That's actually brilliant. I'll run it by my team." For the first time, Maria felt seen not as a maid, but as someone with ideas worth hearing. Vanessa's wrath grew as she sensed Daniel's growing respect for Maria. One evening, as Maria set out dinner, Vanessa accidentally knocked a glass of juice onto her $2,000 blouse, screaming, "You clumsy idiot!" Sophia, coloring nearby, flinched, spilling her own juice on Vanessa's skirt. Vanessa's face contorted with rage. "You little brat!" she shouted, stepping toward Sophia with her hand raised. Maria's body moved before her mind could catch up, shielding her daughter. "Don't touch her," she said, her voice a low growl. Vanessa's hand froze mid-air, but her eyes burned with fury. "You'll regret this," she hissed. Just then, Daniel appeared, his briefcase hitting the floor with a thud. "What the hell is happening?" he demanded, his gaze locking on Vanessa's raised hand, Maria's protective stance, and Sophia's trembling form. Vanessa's expression shifted to victimhood. "Daniel, her kid ruined my skirt, and she's being insolent." But Daniel's eyes lingered on Maria, noting the fear in her posture. The blood trickling from a small cut where Vanessa's ring had grazed her cheek during a clumsy push earlier that day. "Maria, are you okay?" Daniel asked, his voice low but intense. She nodded, barely audible. "Yes, Mr. Harper." Sophia clung to her, silent tears falling. Daniel turned to Vanessa, his face like stone. "Get out!" Vanessa blinked, stunned. "What, Daniel? You can't," I said. "Get out," he repeated, his voice dangerous. "Now!" Vanessa grabbed her purse, her heels clicking furiously as she stormed out, slamming the door. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by Sophia's soft sobs. Maria knelt, hugging her daughter tightly. "It's okay, mi amor. We're safe." But her eyes met Daniel's, and she saw something new there. Anger, yes, but also guilt, as if he'd failed them. "Maria, why didn't you tell me she was like this?" he asked, his voice raw. Maria looked away, her throat tight. "I needed this job. For Sophia." Daniel's hands clenched, his knuckles white. "No one touches you or Sophia in my house, ever." That night, Maria sat in the staff room, Sophia asleep beside her, and opened her phone. She scrolled through photos of bruises, timestamps marking Vanessa's accidents over the past 3 months. She'd kept them hidden, a safeguard against the day she might need to fight. Now, with Daniel's promise ringing in her ears, she wondered if she could trust him. He'd stood up to Vanessa, but would he stand by them if she returned her influence, backed by her powerful family? Maria's fingers hovered over a text to her labor lawyer friend, hesitating. She wasn't ready to fight yet, but the fire of defiance burned brighter. She glanced at Sophia's sleeping face, then at the concha recipe open on her laptop. Vanessa could try to break her, but Maria Alvarez was no stranger to battles. She'd survived abandonment, poverty, and prejudice. She'd survive this too, and she'd make sure Sophia's dreams and her own would rise like the bread she baked, no matter who tried to tear them down. The Seattle sky hung heavy with gray clouds, mirroring the storm brewing in Maria Alvarez's heart as she walked Sophia to school through the drizzle-soaked streets of Queen Anne. It had been a week since Daniel Harper had thrown Vanessa Caldwell out of his mansion, her heels echoing like gunfire as she stormed away. Maria had hoped the silence that followed would bring peace, but instead it felt like the calm before a hurricane. Vanessa's parting words, "You'll regret this," rang in her ears, a threat that clung like damp air. Maria tightened her grip on Sophia's hand, her daughter's chatter about a science project barely piercing her thoughts. She'd spent the night studying for her business administration course, her laptop glowing in the dim apartment, but her focus kept drifting to the photos on her phone, bruises on her arm, a torn apron, a time-stamped record of Vanessa's cruelty. She hadn't shown them to Daniel yet, afraid of what exposing them might cost her job, her stability, her daughter's future. But Vanessa's absence hadn't ended the torment, it had only changed its form. At the Harper mansion, Maria began her morning routine, dusting the sleek glass surfaces of the living room while Daniel worked in his study, his voice carrying through a conference call. Since the incident, he'd been home more, his usual trips to Silicon Valley replaced by Zoom meetings and late-night emails. He'd check on Maria, asking if she needed anything, his blue eyes lingering with a mix of guilt and resolve. Yesterday, he'd brought Sophia a sketchbook, saying, "For your bakery designs." The gesture had warmed Maria's heart, but it also scared her. His kindness felt like a lifeline, but one that could snap if Vanessa's influence reached him. As Maria swept the foyer, her phone buzzed with a text from the bank loan application denied due to concerns about financial stability. Her stomach dropped. She'd applied for a small loan to cover her final semester's tuition, her credit history spotless. This was the second denial in 3 days, and the vague wording felt like a slap. She shoved the phone into her apron, her hands shaking as she resumed cleaning, but the unease grew. Sophia arrived after school, her rain boots splashing as she ran into the kitchen. "Mama, I told my teacher about your conchas, and she wants to try them." Maria forced a smile, setting out a plate of empanadas she'd baked the night before. "That's sweet, mi amor. Maybe we'll bring her some." As Sophia munched happily, Maria's phone rang. It was the principal of Sophia's school. Her voice clipped. "Ms. Alvarez, we need to meet urgently. There's been a complaint about Sophia's residency documentation." Maria's heart sank. What kind of complaint? The principal hesitated. "It's anonymous, but it suggests you falsified your address to enroll Sophia. We have to investigate." Maria's mind raced to Vanessa. This wasn't a coincidence. She promised Sophia she'd handle it, but as she hung up, her hands trembled. Vanessa wasn't just targeting her, She was going after Sophia, too. That evening, Maria organized a small baking event for Sophia's school fundraiser, a chance to share her abuela's recipes, diminish the sting of the day's setbacks. She and Sophia spent hours preparing trays of pan dulce and tamales, their laughter filling the apartment as they dusted sugar over warm bread. At the school gym, parents and teachers crowded around Maria's table praising the flavors. A local food blogger, intrigued by the buzz, snapped photos and asked Maria about her recipes. Just family traditions. Maria said, her smile genuine for the first time that day. Sophia beamed, handing out samples, her pride in her mother evident. But the moment was tainted when Maria overheard two parents whispering, "Isn't she Harper's maid? What's she doing acting like a chef?" The words cut, but Maria straightened, focusing on Sophia's joy. She wouldn't let gossip dim this moment. Back at the mansion, Daniel noticed Maria's tension as she cleaned the kitchen. "You okay?" he asked, leaning against the counter. His tie loosened. Maria hesitated, then told him about the loan denials and the school complaint. His jaw tightened. "This has Vanessa written all over it." He pulled out his phone, dialing a number. "I'm hiring a private investigator. If she's behind this, we'll find proof." Maria's eyes widened. "Mr. Harper, that could make things worse. Her family has connections." Daniel's gaze was steady. "So do I. No one threatens you or Sophia in my house." His words stirred something in Maria hope, but also fear. She wanted to believe him, but Vanessa's reach felt endless, like the Seattle rain that never stopped. The investigator, a gruff ex-cop named Frank Torres, met with Daniel the next day. Maria overheard snippets from the hallway as she dusted Vanessa's father. Judge Caldwell has been funneling money from his wife's charity. And Vanessa, she's got a history. 3 former maids filed complaints for harassment, all silenced with payouts. Maria's heart raced. She'd suspected Vanessa was dangerous, but this was bigger than she'd imagined. That night, as she tucked Sophia into bed, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Back off, Daniel, or your kid pays the price." Maria's blood ran cold. She showed the message to Daniel, who cursed under his breath. "This ends now," he said, his voice low but fierce. "I'm taking you and Sophia to my company's gala tomorrow. We'll face her together." Maria shook her head, panic rising. "I'm just your maid. I don't belong there." Daniel's eyes softened. "You're more than that, Maria. You're family." The word hung between them, heavy with meaning. Maria spent the night wrestling with her decision. The gala was a glittering event for Seattle's tech elite, a world of wealth and power she'd only seen through dust rags and mop handles. But Daniel's insistence, his quiet strength, chipped away at her fear. She thought of Sophia, of the bakery she dreamed of the life she wanted to build. If Vanessa was coming for her, hiding wasn't an option. She pulled out her phone, scrolling through the photos of bruises and broken dishes, her evidence of Vanessa's cruelty. She forwarded them to Frank, her hands steady, despite her racing heart. If she was going to fight, she'd need every weapon she had. The next morning, Daniel sent a dress to Maria's apartment, a deep sapphire gown that hugged her curves and made Sophia gasp. "Mama, you look like a queen." Maria laughed, but her nerves churned. As she prepared for the gala, another text arrived from her university advisor. "Allegations of plagiarism in your latest assignment. We're launching an investigation." Maria's knees buckled. Plagiarism. Her work was her own, painstakingly crafted during sleepless nights. Vanessa's shadow loomed larger, her influence seeping into every corner of Maria's life. She called Daniel, her voice breaking. "She's ruining me. the bank, the school. Now this. I can't keep fighting. Daniel's response was immediate. You're not alone, Maria. Meet me at the gala. We'll end this tonight. His certainty anchored her, but as she slipped into the gown, her reflection in the mirror looked like a stranger. A woman caught between fear and defiance, ready to face a storm she hadn't chosen. At the school, Maria dropped Sophia off with Daniel's mother, Elena Harper, a warm woman with silver hair who hugged Sophia like her own. Go show them who you are, Elena whispered to Maria, her eyes twinkling. Maria nodded, clutching her purse where she'd tucked a USB drive with her evidence. The gala loomed ahead, a battlefield where Vanessa's lies would clash with Maria's truth. As she stepped into the car, Daniel sent the Seattle skyline glittered through the rain, a city of dreams and dangers. Maria thought of her abuela, who'd faced poverty and loss with unyielding strength. She thought of Sophia, whose laughter was worth any fight. And she thought of Daniel, whose belief in her was a spark in the darkness. Vanessa could try to break her, but Maria Alvarez was no longer just a maid. She was a mother, a dreamer, a fighter, and tonight, she'd prove it. The chandelier-lit ballroom of the Fairmont Olympic Hotel in downtown Seattle sparkled with the clink of champagne glasses and the murmur of the city's tech elite. But Maria Alvarez felt like an intruder in her sapphire gown, her heart pounding as she stood beside Daniel Harper. The gala, an annual showcase for Harper Technologies, was a sea of tailored suits and glittering dresses, a world Maria had only glimpsed through the lens of a maid's duties. Tonight, though, she was here as Daniel's guest. Her presence, a quiet rebellion against Vanessa Caldwell's campaign to destroy her. The USB drive in her purse, loaded with photos of bruises and threatening texts, felt like a grenade ready to expose Vanessa's cruelty. Daniel's hand brushed hers, steadying her nerves. "You've got this," he whispered, his blue eyes fierce with conviction. Maria nodded, but her stomach churned. Vanessa was here. She'd seen her across the room, a vision in crimson, laughing with a circle of investors, her father, Judge Caldwell, at her side. The air crackled with tension, and Maria knew this night would either break her or set her free. The past week had been a nightmare. Vanessa's retaliation had escalated, striking at every pillar of Maria's life. The bank's loan denials, the school's investigation into Sophia's residency, the plagiarism accusation at her university, all bore Vanessa's fingerprints, backed by her family's influence. Maria had barely slept, her nights split between comforting Sophia, who sensed her mother's distress, and preparing for this moment. Daniel's investigator, Frank Torres, had uncovered damning evidence, bank records showing Judge Caldwell's embezzlement from his wife's charity, and documents proving Vanessa had paid off 3 former maids to silence their complaints of abuse. Maria had forwarded her own photos to Frank, her hands shaking as she did. Now, standing in the ballroom, she felt the weight of those choices. She wasn't just fighting for herself, she was fighting for Sophia, for the bakery she dreamed of, for a life where she could be more than a maid. As the gala's program began, Daniel took the stage, his voice commanding the room. "Thank you all for being here," he said, his gaze sweeping over the crowd. "Tonight, we celebrate innovation, but also truth." Whispers rippled through the audience as he gestured to Maria. "Maria Alvarez, my colleague and friend, has faced lies and threats to silence her. But she's stronger than that." Maria's cheeks burned as eyes turned to her, some curious, others judgmental. Vanessa's laugh cut through the murmurs, sharp and mocking. "Colleague, she's your maid, Daniel." Judge Caldwell stepped forward, his voice booming. "This is inappropriate, Harper. You're embarrassing yourself." Daniel's smile was cold. "What's inappropriate is embezzling charity funds, Judge, or silencing victims of abuse." He signaled to a technician, and a screen lit up behind him, displaying bank records and scanned complaints from Vanessa's former maids. Gasps filled the room. Vanessa's face paled, her eyes darting to her father, who stood frozen. Maria's heart raced as Daniel continued. Maria has endured harassment from Vanessa Caldwell, who's used her family's power to intimidate and lie. But tonight, the truth comes out. He nodded to Maria, who stepped forward, her voice trembling but clear. I'm just a single mother, trying to build a future for my daughter Sophia. But Vanessa tried to take that away because I dared to exist in her world. She held up her phone, showing a photo of a bruise on her arm, time-stamped and undeniable. This is what she did to me. And she threatened my daughter. The room erupted in murmurs, and a reporter from the Seattle Times snapped photos, her eyes wide. Vanessa lunged toward the stage, her voice shrill. She's lying! She's a gold digger! But Daniel stepped between them, his presence a shield. The evidence speaks for itself. My lawyer has already sent it to the authorities. Judge Caldwell tried to slip away, but security blocked the exits, their radios crackling with police chatter outside. The crowd parted as Vanessa stormed toward Maria, her face twisted with rage. You think you've won, she hissed. You're nothing. Maria met her gaze, her voice steady. I'm enough for my daughter. That's all that matters. Vanessa faltered, her venom no match for Maria's quiet strength. As security escorted her and her father out, the room buzzed with shock. Daniel took Maria's hand, leading her off the stage. You were incredible, he said, his voice low. Maria's knees trembled, but she felt lighter, as if a weight had lifted. The gala continued, but the mood had shifted. Investors approached Maria, intrigued by her courage. One restaurateur asked about her baking. Emboldened, Maria shared her dream of Sabores de Abuela, a bakery rooted in her Mexican heritage. I'd invest in that, the man said, handing her his card. Maria's heart soared, but doubt lingered. Could she really step into this world? That night, back at Daniel's mansion, Sophia ran to Maria, her eyes bright. Mama, did you win? Maria hugged her, laughing through tears. We're getting there, mi amor. Daniel's mother, Elena, who'd watched Sophia, smiled warmly. You've got a fighter's heart, Maria. Later, as Sophia slept, Daniel found Maria in the kitchen, where she'd instinctively started cleaning. Stop, he said, gently taking the rag from her hand. You're not my maid tonight. He hesitated, then pulled a folded paper from his pocket, a drawing by Sophia showing 3 stick figures labeled Mama, Sophia, and Daniel standing outside a bakery. She gave me this, he said, his voice soft. Said, it's us, a family. Maria's breath caught. Daniel, I don't know what to say. He stepped closer, his eyes searching hers. Say you'll let me be part of your life. Not as your boss, but as someone who loves you. Maria's heart raced. Love. She'd spent years guarding herself, trusting only her own strength to protect Sophia. But Daniel's actions standing against Vanessa, believing in her dreams, had cracked that armor. I'm scared, she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. This world, your world, it's not mine. Daniel took her hands. It's ours, if you want it. You're not just a maid, Maria. You're brilliant, brave, and I've never met anyone like you. Tears welled in her eyes, but she nodded. Okay, but I need to do this my way. I'm finishing my degree, opening my bakery. I won't lose myself. Daniel smiled, relief flooding his face. I wouldn't want you any other way. 6 months later, the scent of cinnamon and vanilla filled the air at Pike Place Market, where Sabores de Abuela opened its doors. The bakery, housed in a charming brick storefront, was packed with locals and tourists drawn by Maria's pan dulce and tamales. Sophia, in a tiny apron embroidered with "Official Taste Tester," handed out samples, her laughter echoing. Daniel, now Maria's husband, worked the counter beside her, his tech empire humming in the background as he took a back seat to support her dream. Their wedding had been small, held in the mansion's garden, with Elena and Sophia as their biggest cheerleaders. Maria's degree was framed on the bakery's wall next to a photo of her abuela, whose recipes lived in every bite. During the opening, a group of tech investors, some from the gala, arrived, eager to taste the food that had sparked such a story. One, a Japanese CEO, bowed to Maria. "Your husband said your baking is art." He was right. Maria smiled, her hand resting on the simple gold ring Daniel had given her. "It's my heritage," she said, "and my daughter's future." As the day wound down, Maria watched Sophia show Elena a new cake design, her small hands sketching with confidence. Daniel joined her, his apron dusted with flour. "You did it," he said, kissing her forehead. Maria looked around at the bustling bakery, her daughter's joy, the man who'd chosen her over his world. "No," she said softly. "We did it." Later, as they cleaned up, Sophia tugged Maria's sleeve. "Mama, can I be a baker like you when I grow up?" Maria knelt, her heart full. "You can be anything, mi amor. A baker, a scientist, a dreamer. Whatever you choose, I'll be here, and so will Daniel." Sophia grinned, hugging them both. "I want to make people happy like you do." Maria's eyes met Daniel's, and she saw the same truth reflected there. Happiness wasn't in wealth or status, but in the courage to fight for what mattered, in the love that bound them, in the dreams they'd built together. As they locked the bakery, the Seattle rain fell softly, but inside warmth and hope bloomed, a testament to a woman who'd turned pain into purpose, and a family forged from defiance and love.